Lee Jun-so died on Thursday. He simply fell in the dirty corridor of a half-destroyed shopping center in Incheon, with a hole in his side from a homemade knife and the last thought that he should have left earlier, 4 years and 2 months after the beginning. He lived longer than most, longer than the neighbors who died in the first week without understanding what was happening. Longer than those who fled to the cities and suffocated in the crowd. Longer than the optimists who waited for the government to solve it. He survived by intelligence, supplies, and solitude. He died from solitude too, from the fact that alone he could not watch all the corners at once. The last thing he felt was the cold of the concrete floor. The last thing he thought was that he should have built deeper. He opened his eyes. The ceiling of his apartment in Seoul. White, with a small crack near the ventilation. He had looked at that crack for 3 years before he moved. Knew it like family. The phone on the nightstand. Screen 7:14 a.m., Tuesday, January 14th, 2028. He lay there and breathed, evenly, methodically, like a person who had just died and was now checking whether everything was in place. 2 hands, no knife in the side, no pain. 3 years until the beginning. The notification appeared a minute later. Not on the phone, in his head. More precisely before his eyes, transparent, bluish, as if someone were projecting text directly into his field of vision. He was not afraid. In that life he had seen enough strange things not to be frightened by text in the air. He read slowly. Shelter System Primary Initialization. A host with memory of the previous cycle has been detected. Verification complete. Welcome, Lee Jun-so. The shelter system is an autonomous survival module. Purpose: to help the host build, equip, and protect a shelter before the event begins. Method: issuing schemes, calculations, warnings, and tasks as the host becomes ready. The system does not make decisions for the host. The system does not guarantee survival. The system provides tools. Date of the event: March 31st, 2031. Remaining 1,172 days. Begin? Jun-so looked at the notification for a long time. Then he sat up on the bed, reached for the phone, checked the date. January 14th, 2028. Everything matched. Yes, he said. Quietly, evenly, like a person who had made the decision before being asked. Siganas. Initialization complete. Welcome to the shelter system. Version basic. Unlocked. Section planning. The system's first recommendation: do not rush. 1,172 days is enough if you act correctly, not enough if you act chaotically. The first step is not a shovel and not concrete. The first step is money. Jun-so got up, walked to the kitchen, put on the kettle. While the water was heating, he opened the laptop, created a new document. Wrote at the top, 1,172 days. What needs to be done? The list took 2 hours. Jun-so had been a construction engineer for 5 years. That meant he knew how to calculate not only estimates, but also what lies between the lines of estimates. How much it really costs to hire a crew versus what is written in the price list. How much time something takes when it is marked in the plan as 1 day. What safety margin to build in so as not to overpay, but also not to get a collapse a year later. He calculated for 3 days. The result was disappointing. A bunker of the required size, at least 50 meters deep, 3 levels, residential and technical zones, filtration, ventilation, water supply systems cost approximately 12 times more than he had in his account. He looked at the number. Hoid system. Current capital insufficient. Required capital at the construction stage, times 12 of current. Options for increasing capital. 1. Stock market trading using knowledge of future events. 2. Sale of current real estate and assets. 3. Attracting investors is not recommended. Risk of exposure. Recommendation: option 1 plus option 2. Time required to form the necessary capital with competent actions. 8 to 14 months. He was not a trader, but he had something better than a trading strategy. He knew what would happen. Not every day, not every stock, but major events: the earthquake in Japan in June 2028, the bankruptcy of a major Korean developer in September, the sharp rise of the pharmaceutical sector at the end of the year when the first major flu epidemic begins. He remembered all of that. He had lived through it outside, without money and without a roof, but he remembered. Now he had a roof, a little money, and memory. He opened a brokerage account the next day. Started small not because he wanted to, because he did not know how otherwise. The first trades were cautious, testing ones. He was not testing the market, he was testing his memory. Whether what he remembered matched what was happening now. It matched. By March 2028, in 2 months, the capital had grown by 40%. A small result for a professional trader. For an engineer who had never done this, a good start. System. Capital, plus 40% in 62 days. Progress toward the goal, 8.3%. Note, the pace is sufficient but uneven. Recommendation, diversify, do not keep all resources in exchange assets. By the end of 2028, transfer 60% into material assets. Inflation will accelerate at the beginning of 2029. He wrote down the recommendation. The system gave advice, he thought it over, did not follow it blindly. In that life, he was used to making decisions himself, in this one too. But the system was rarely wrong. Chapter 2. Land. Land was the first real decision. Not the most expensive, the most important. The wrong place meant the failure of everything that would come after. Junso knew where to look. In that life, after 2 years of wandering, he found a mountain area in Gangwon province. By accident, through a half-dead geologist who was dying in an abandoned house and managed to tell him about the rock foundation and underground water in those mountains. The geologist died. Junso reached the place half a year later. Too late to build anything serious, too late to save anyone except himself. Now he remembered what the geologist had said. The coordinates, approximately. The characteristics of the soil. He went to see it in April. 5 hours from Seoul, bus to Wonju, then a local bus, then 3 hours on foot along a mountain road, which on the map was marked as a road but in reality was a trail. Junso walked slowly, looking at his feet and to the sides. The mountains in April were still gray with remnants of snow in the shade. Quiet. No signs of habitation within a radius of 20 kilometers. The nearest settlement was farther than necessary. Good. He found the place by evening. A small plateau at an altitude of 600 meters above sea level. Rock on 3 sides. On the 4th, a slope downward, overgrown with pines. He stood, looked. System. Geological analysis, based on available data. Rock foundation presumably granite, depth 30 to 40 meters. Underground water possible at a depth of 45 to 55 meters. Seismic activity low. Transport accessibility limited. A plus for secrecy, a minus for delivery of materials. Preliminary assessment. Suitable. Recommendation, conduct geological exploration before purchase. He carried out the geological exploration, hired a small company, explained that he was planning a mining survey. The company took a month, arrived with equipment, took samples. The results came at the end of May. Granite at 38 meters. Underground river aquifer at 51. Estimated yield 1.5 to 2,000 liters per hour. Junso read the report. System. Geological report confirmed. Location, optimal. Task 1, land completed. Reward, section, shelter design, unlocked. New schemes available, basic layout of the underground complex. Load calculation for granite foundation. Scheme of the vertical entrance shaft. He bought the land in June. 12 hectares of mountain massif in Gangwon province. A mountain no one needed. It had been for sale for a long time. There were no buyers. He paid slightly above the asking price so they would not bargain long and became the owner. Officially for a private geological project. Returned to Seoul. Sat down over the blueprints. He designed the shelter for 2 months. Without rushing, carefully. Every square meter mattered. Every decision had consequences that would show up in a year or in 5 years. The system issued basic schemes like templates. He reworked them for the specific conditions. 3 levels. The first minus 35 meters from the surface. Residential, sleeping rooms, common hall, kitchen, bathrooms. Designed for 20 people, he decided that immediately, no less. Fewer than 20, and the group is too vulnerable to losses. More, and the resources will not hold in the first years. The second, minus 42 meters. Production. A large hydroponic block with calculation for area growth. A full medical block with an operating room. Workshop. A small chemical laboratory for the synthesis of basic medicines and water analysis. Storage rooms. The third, minus 50 meters. Technical. Generators. Water filtration system. Reserve supplies, the most critical, the deepest, the most protected. Separately, the entrance shaft. Vertical, 8 meters in diameter, with 2 independent airlock chambers. Each chamber, a steel door 30 centimeters thick, a lead interlayer, Hermetic seals changed annually. Between the chambers, a decontamination zone. Ultraviolet lamps, a shower for washing off particles, containers for contaminated clothing. Not a single particle from outside should pass beyond the second chamber. A system project check. Analysis of the shelter scheme. Level 1, residential. Check layout is optimal. Level 2, production. Warning: hydroponics insufficient area leads to for 20 people. At least 280 square meters are needed, 200 planned. Recommendation: expand at the expense of the adjacent compartment. Level 3, technical. Checkmark entrance shaft. Check mark scheme is correct. Critical note: no emergency exit provided. One entrance equals 1 point of failure. Recommendation: second exit, a horizontal tunnel at least 200 meters long. Exit beyond the perimeter. Emergency exit. He looked at the system's note. In that life, he had seen people who built shelters with one entrance. Several of them ended up trapped not by radiation, by other people. A blocked entrance, a broken mechanism, a collapse. One exit meant one mistake equals the end. He added a second exit to the project. A horizontal tunnel 230 meters long came out into a rock crevice on the other side of the plateau. Camouflaged outside, inconspicuous. The project ultimately took 180 pages. Junso printed it, reread it 3 times. Found 12 mistakes, corrected them. System. Task 2. Project completed. Shelter scheme approved. Estimated radiation protection at full equipment, 96.8%. Estimated autonomy, 9.1 years for 20 people. Unlocked, section Construction Stage 1. Next step, formation of a construction crew and delivery of primary materials. Reminder, remaining, 987 days. There is money, there is a place, there is a project. Now hands are needed. Finding a construction crew was easier than he thought. Harder was finding the right one. He needed people who knew how to work in the mountains underground with granite, who did not ask unnecessary questions. Who would come to Gangwon Province and live there for several months? He planned to build on a rotational method, 3-month shifts, and who after the work would not tell what exactly they had built. The last point was the most difficult. He spent 3 weeks searching. Through acquaintances in the construction industry, carefully, not directly. Through a former colleague who worked at mining sites and knew people. Through him, he found Park Chol-soo, foreman, 52 years old. A face like that of a man who had worked outside all his life, weathered, wrinkled, with the narrowed eyes of a man used to estimating distances. Handshake firm, professional. They met in a cafe in Wonju. "What are we building?" asked Chol-soo. No preface. "An underground complex," said Junso. "Personal, for geological research and equipment storage." Chol-soo looked at him. "Depth?" 50 meters. "Granite?" "Yes, I have the exploration report. Show me." Junso took out the report. Chol-soo read it not quickly, attentively, turning pages, sometimes going back. Engineering reading, he understood what was written. "Good granite," he said at last. "Dense. Not easy to break through." "I know. That is why I am looking for people with experience." "Deadline?" "First stage 6 months. Main shaft and first level." "How many people?" "Decide for yourself. I pay for result and for speed." "Payment?" Junso named a figure twice the market rate. Chol-soo looked at him, for the first time with real attention. Where does a geologist get that kind of money? "I am a construction engineer, not a geologist. Where does a construction engineer get that kind of money?" "That is my question," said Junso. Silence. "What are we not building?" said Chol-soo. "Not weapons, not something illegal?" "A concrete underground complex," repeated Junso. "Walls, floors, ceilings, ventilation ducts, electrical cable routes, water pipes, nothing illegal." "Why the secrecy?" "Because this is a private facility and I do not want outsiders to know about it." Chol-soo looked at him. "Rich people sometimes build such things," he said slowly. "I have seen it. Usually they call it a private bomb shelter." Junso did not answer. "Understood," said Chol-soo. "I will take a crew, 6 people for a start. Might expand it if the pace does not suit." "Good. One condition. Speak." "1. I look at the schemes in full. I am the foreman. I must understand what I am building. Otherwise, I cannot guarantee quality. Junso thought for a second. Fine, he said. Under NDA. What? Non-disclosure agreement, legally formalized. I do not talk even without paper. The paper is for my peace of mind. Cholsu looked at him with a narrowed gaze. Agreed, he said. Construction began in September 2028. Junso arrived at the site 3 days before the crew prepared a temporary camp. 4 trailers for housing, 1 for tools, 1 warehouse. A temporary generator, small for lighting and charging. Cholsu brought 6 men. All no longer young, all had experience written on their hands and faces. No one looked at Junso with surprise or curiosity. They had come to work. The first day, marking out. Junso stood with Cholsu on the plateau and showed according to the blueprints. The center of the shaft is right here, he pointed to the spot. Offsets from the edge of the plateau at least 8 meters. Cholsu looked at the rock. The upper layer is sedimentary rock, he said. 3 meters, maybe 4. Then granite will begin. There the speed will drop. I know. My drilling equipment is sufficient for such work. But explosives are needed for the initial pass. The permit exists, said Junso. Issued for mining work. They processed it quickly. I was dealing with it in parallel with the land purchase. Cholsu looked at him again with that narrowed gaze. You do everything in advance? I try to. A good habit for a builder. I learned it at a high price. The first explosion thundered on Wednesday morning. Small, directed, controlled. It opened the upper layer of sedimentary rock, exposed the granite. Junso stood aside and watched the cloud of dust slowly settle on the slope. The beginning. System. Construction started, penetrated 3.2 meters, sedimentary rock. To granite, approximately 0.5 meters. Estimated progress of the first stage, 0.8%. Remaining until the event, 943 days. Note, the pace on sedimentary rock is good. On granite, a slowdown by 3 to 4 times is expected. Adjust expectations. On granite, everything changed. The drilling rigs worked loudly and slowly. The rock would not yield, it broke by a centimeter, by 2, clinging to the drill as if alive. Explosives helped, but after each explosion it was necessary to clear the debris by hand before drilling further. Cholsu was right, the speed fell 3-fold. By the end of the second week, 7 meters deep. By the end of the first month, 14. Junso lived at the site in one of the trailers, worked on equal terms with the crew. Not because of a shortage of hands, because quality control required presence. He personally checked every row of concrete lining, every connection of reinforcement. Cholsu noticed that. You are a builder, he said one evening. They were sitting by the trailer, eating. I said so. No, you are a builder. Not a client who read books, it shows in your hands. 5 years on sites. What did you build? Residential complexes, infrastructure. Once an underground parking lot. Underground, useful experience. That is exactly why I am here and not in an office. Cholsu ate silently for a second. Junso-si? Yes. I have seen different clients. Rich ones who build bunkers. Pause. Usually they're nervous. They rush us. Call 50 times a day. He looked at Junso. You are not like that. No. Why? Junso thought for a second. Because haste destroys the foundation, he said. In the literal sense. Cholsu looked at him. And in the figurative sense, too, added Junso. The foreman nodded slowly like a man who had heard something familiar. Correct, he said. October brought cold earlier than usual. In the mountains at 600 meters, this was felt more sharply than in the city. The wind was different, damp, with the taste of snow that had not yet fallen, but was already somewhere nearby. It became harder to work, not the work itself, the conditions. Hands froze faster, concrete set differently, the morning start of the equipment took longer. The crew added quilted jackets under their coats and continued. Junso solved the housing issue. Temporary trailers were not suitable for the mountain winter. He brought additional insulated modules, not luxury, but sturdy and warm. Ordered a good kitchen stove, a supply of food 3 months ahead. Cholsu asked why so much. I do not want people thinking about food, said Junso. I want them thinking about work. The foreman said nothing, but Junso noticed that the next day the men worked a little more willingly. Small things mattered. This he knew from that life. When people have the basics, they think about the work. When they do not have the basics, they think only about the basics. By November, 23 meters. System construction progress. Shaft depth, 23 meters. Estimated depth of the first level, 35 meters. Remaining distance, 12 meters. Estimated period, at the current pace, 2.5 months. Crew status, stable. Quality notes. Lining meets requirements. Reinforcement meets requirements. Next stage after reaching the depth, horizontal expansion, first residential level. Required materials for the next stage, attached list. The list was long. Junso began purchasing in parallel so that by the time the crew began the horizontal expansion, the materials were already on site. Delivery to the mountains was a separate task. The nearest proper road ended 8 kilometers from the site. Beyond that, a forest trail that barely allowed an SUV through. He hired 2 drivers with 4-wheel drive trucks. They drove every week, materials, food, fuel for the generator. Every delivery was a logistical task. What to bring now, what can wait, how to optimize the route so as not to run the vehicle empty. Junso kept records in a notebook in parallel with the system by hand. System. Observation. You are keeping duplicate records manually. Reason, in case you shut down, he said. System. Probability of shutdown, less than 0.1%. The remaining 0.1% is mine. The system did not answer. He continued keeping the notebook. December, first week. The drill passed 35 meters and stopped. It did not break. Cholsu simply climbed out of the shaft, came up to Junso, said, "We reached it." Briefly, in a workmanlike way, Junso climbed down on the temporary staples along the shaft wall with a flashlight. At that moment, the shaft was still damp. Concrete lining had been applied down to 30 meters. The lower 5 were still bare granite. He stood at the bottom. Shone the flashlight upward, 35 meters of stone pipe disappeared into the darkness. Shone it downward under his feet, granite, dense, cold, reliable. In that life, he had never seen this place from the bottom. He reached here when he could no longer dig. Stood by the rock outside and understood that inside there was water, warmth, protection, and he had nothing to reach it with. Now he stood below. The ceiling was earth, granite under his feet. System. Shaft depth, 35.2 meters. First level reached. Stage 1, shaft completed. New stage unlocked. Stage 2, horizontal expansion. Task, drive the horizontal tunnels of the first residential level. Area, 420 square meters. Estimated period, 4 to 5 months at the current pace. Recommendation, increase the crew at this stage. Horizontal drilling is different mechanics. Several groups can work in parallel. Junso stood at the bottom for another minute, then climbed back up. On the surface, Cholsu was waiting. "We expand," said Junso. "More people are needed. Find 4 more. Those who know how to work horizontally. I will find them, and Cholsu see." "Yes." Junso looked at him. "Thank you." The foreman looked at him for a second. "It is work," he said. "Good work." Something in Cholsu's face, not a smile, but close. "Yes," he agreed. "Good. January 20 to 29. Horizontal expansion turned out to be different work. Not worse and not better, simply different. A vertical shaft is a strike downward, one direction, one task. Horizontal tunnels are a network. Main corridor, branches, rooms, technical niches, all at once, all connected. Cholsu brought 4 new men, 10 people in the crew total. Split them into 3 groups. The first, the main corridor to the east. The second, to the west. The third, lining and reinforcement of the already driven sections. They worked in 3 shifts. The shaft was never silent. Sound always came from somewhere below. Drills, hammers, voices, the clatter of debris and containers that were raised to the surface and dumped in a pile at the edge of the plateau. The pile grew. By the end of January, a heap of broken granite the size of a small house. Junso looked at it every morning. Outside, a mountain of debris. Inside, space for life. System progress. Horizontal tunnels, 34% of plan. Main corridor, east, 28 meters out of 60. Main corridor, west, 21 meters out of 45. Branches, 3 out of 12. Lining quality meets requirements. Reinforcement meets requirements. Estimated time to complete the stage, 3.5 months. Note, the Western group works slower than the Eastern one by 18%. Reason, the rock is heterogeneous, quartz veins are encountered. Recommendation, reassign one person from the Eastern group. Junso reassigned him. The pace evened out. He lived here constantly now, had not gone to Seoul for 3 weeks already. The camp had grown, 2 more trailers, a proper dining room, a heated shower. A small library, he had brought a box of books. Not because the builders asked, simply because he knew. Long shifts in the mountains, nothing to do in the evenings. People need something besides work and sleep. No one took the books in the first week. In the second, one of the new workers, young, about 25 years old, took something about geology. Then a second took a detective novel. Then the books began disappearing from the shelf and appearing back again. A small thing, but small things added up into an atmosphere. In February, the first emergency happened. A small one, no one was hurt. But it could have been worse. The Eastern group was driving a branch under the future kitchen. One of the workers, Bae Sok-jun, 40 years old, experienced, placed the explosive charge incorrectly. Not grossly incorrectly, by millimeters, by angle. The blast went not where it should, hit the ceiling instead of the wall. The ceiling did not collapse, the granite held, but a crack ran 3 meters from the wall to the middle. Chol-soo came up with a stone face. A crack in the eastern branch, he said. 60 by 30 centimeters, ceiling. Junso went down himself, looked with the flashlight, touched it. Chol-soo stood nearby. Is the granite holding? Asked Junso. For now, yes, but it is unstable. Reinforcement is needed? Steel and resin anchor. We have it. How long will it take? 2 days if done properly. Do it properly. Chol-soo nodded. Then, unexpectedly, Sok-jun is at fault. I know. What should be done with him? Junso looked at the crack. Has he made such a mistake before? He asked. No. First time in 8 years of work. The first time is not a reason to leave. Pause. Talk to him. Let him figure out what went wrong, himself, without prompts. And if he figures it out, he keeps working. A person who understood his mistake works better than one who has never made one. Chol-soo looked at him. You are a builder, he said. Again, but now with a different intonation. I told you, they reinforced the crack in a day and 8 hours. Chol-soo did not spend the full 2 days. Sok-jun himself came to Junso in the evening. I understood what I did wrong, he said. Explain. Sok-jun explained technically, precisely, without self-flagellation. You understood correctly, said Junso. Tomorrow, back on shift. March 2029. On the surface, the snow had melted. The trees on the slope were still bare, but already with buds, with that first premonition of greenery that is visible only if you look carefully. Below, without seasons. 15 degrees all year round, the granite kept the temperature even. No wind, no rain, no sun. Time was determined only by the clock and by when the shift ended. The main corridor of the first level was finished by mid-March. 60 meters from east to west, 3 meters high, 2.5 wide, lined with B50 concrete, dense, dark, under the flashlight resembling the insides of a large living creature. Junso walked through it from end to end. Alone. In silence. Footsteps echoing. He stopped at each future doorway. 12 living rooms, a common hall, a kitchen. Stood. Looked into the darkness. Empty rectangles in the walls. In a year, doors, light, people. Aoyi system. Stage 2, first level completed. Main corridor, check residential compartments. Rough version, check common hall, check kitchen, check unlocked. Stage 3, second level. Task, drive the production level, depth 42 meters. In parallel, begin installation of life support systems on the first level. Important note, installation of life support systems is a separate specialization. Chol-soo's construction crew is concrete and rock. Needed electricians, plumbers, ventilation specialists. Recommendation, parallel hiring of technical specialists. He began searching in parallel. Not through forums, through specific companies, small specialized ones. Industrial ventilation, one firm. Industrial water supply, another. Electrical work for isolated facilities, a third. To each he said the same thing. Private facility, secrecy, payment above market, no questions asked. Most agreed. Money solved the issue of silence better than any NDA. By April, there were 3 parallel flows of work. Cholsu's crew was hammering the second level downward. Electricians were running cable routes on the first. Plumbers were installing the water supply, still without water, just pipes, distribution through the rooms. Junso walked among all 3, watched, checked, resolved conflicts when the groups got in each other's way in the corridors. The conflicts were minor, over workspace, over sequence. He resolved them quickly and without arguments. Hapti system. Intersection of work in Sector B3. Electricians and plumbers are claiming the same corridor at the same time. Recommendation, separate by time, electricians in the morning, plumbers after lunch. That is what he did. By June, the second level was driven 70%. On the first level, electrical work completed, water supply completed, ventilation ducts in progress. Ventilation turned out to be the most difficult part. Not technically, Kwon Chan-ik, the engineer he hired for this job, knew what to do. It was difficult in another way. In concept, ordinary ventilation takes air from outside, runs it through filters, supplies it inside. For a bunker in a normal radiation situation, HEPA filters are enough. But the radiation outside will not be normal. It will be high, constantly, not peak like in a nuclear explosion, background, viscous, everywhere. Junso explained the task to Kwon Chan-ik. I need a system that can work in 2 modes, he said. Mode 1, intake from outside with maximum purification. Mode 2, complete recirculation with no outside intake at all. Kwon Chan-ik looked at him. Complete recirculation is difficult, he said. Carbon dioxide accumulates. Something that absorbs it is needed. Hydroponics, said Junso. I will have a large hydroponic block. Plants absorb CO2. That is not enough for 20 people. I know. Additionally, chemical scrubbers. A CO2 absorption system on lithium hydroxide. Kwon Chan-ik looked at him for a long time. You have thought this through seriously, he said. This is life support, said Junso. It does not get more serious than that. They redesigned the ventilation scheme 3 times. System ventilation. Scheme 1. Insufficient filtration of radioactive particles leads to add HEPA H 14-stage plus carbon filter. Scheme V2. Insufficient air exchange volume during recirculation leads to increase the diameter of the internal ducts. Scheme V3 accepted. Estimated time of full recirculation without outside intake, up to 72 hours at the current absorber volume. Recommendation, increase the lithium hydroxide reserve to 500 kilograms. 500 kilograms of lithium hydroxide. He ordered it. Kwon Chan-ik installed the system for 2 months. By August, the ventilation was working. The first test, all exits blocked, full recirculation mode, control CO, 2 measurements every 2 hours. 16 hours, the indicators were normal. 32 hours, normal. 48, a slight rise in CO2, but within permissible limits. 72 hours, the system reached the limit. CO2 rose to 0.5%. Not critical, but noticeable. System, ventilation test, completed. Recirculation autonomy, 68 hours at the calculated load of 20 people. Below calculated by 5%. Reason, scrubbers operate at 94% efficiency instead of 100%. Solution, increase the absorber reserve by 12% or add a 3rd scrubber. Recommendation, a 3rd scrubber is more reliable than increasing the reserve. He added a 3rd scrubber. Repeat test, 81 hours. Enough. August, the 2nd level was fully driven through. Junso went down to 51 meters, to where the geologist had found the aquifer. Not alone with Kwon Ha-eun, the electrician he had hired a month earlier for the installation of the generators. Ha-eun was 30 years old, taciturn, one of those people who speak little but precisely. They went down with flashlights. At 51 meters, the rock changed color, darker, slightly damp to the touch. Junso knocked on the wall. The sound was different. Duller. Here, he said. Ha-eun looked at the wall. Just break through? Carefully. A small opening first, check the pressure. Sok-jun worked carefully. He now always worked carefully. A small directed charge, strictly controlled. The explosion was a pop, not thunder, and immediately water. Not a fountain, a steady stream, dark, cold, smelling of stone. It struck the opposite wall, flowed along the floor toward the drainage gutter. Junso stood and watched, held out his hand. Cold, very cold, as if it had passed through the mountain massif for the last thousands of years and had not had time to warm up. System. Aquifer opened. Water temperature plus 6 degrees Celsius. Estimated yield 1,800 liters per hour. Analysis preliminary. Alkaline, hard, clean. By biological indicators requires softening and pH correction. Recommendation: immediately install a temporary diversion channel, controlled water intake. Main purification system, installation at the next stage. He designed the purification system for 2 months. 5 stages: mechanical purification, softening, reverse osmosis, activated carbon, ultraviolet disinfection. Plus a 6th stage that the system added, and that was not in the standard schemes. System water purification. Additional stage: radiation sorption. Radioactive isotopes penetrate underground waters through the soil. After the event begins, the background level in the aquifer will rise. Standard reverse osmosis holds back most isotopes. For guaranteed purification, add ion exchange resins of a special composition. Supplier: industrial chemistry, specialized. Resin reserve, minimum for 5 years of operation. Junso ordered the resins. The installation of the purification system took 3 months: October, November, December. By January 2030, the water was running clean. He drank the first glass of clean water from the mountain aquifer himself. Stood in the technical compartment, alone with a simple glass. Cold, odorless. Slightly hard, the softener was still being adjusted. But clean. System. Water supply system, active. Capacity, 1,650 liters per hour. Reserve tank stock, 80,000 liters. Daily norm for 20 people, drinking plus technical, approximately 2,000 liters. Reserve, 40 days without supply from the aquifer. Stage 4 water supply completed. Shelter status, level 3. Remaining until the event, 456 days. 456 days. Junso looked at the notification. A year and 3 months. There are walls, there is water. There is ventilation, there is electricity, there are no generators, no hydroponics, no medical block, no supplies, no people. He set down the glass, opened the notebook, wrote a new list. Kwon Ha-eun first saw the geothermal installation in February 2030. Junso showed him the scheme, complex on 3 sheets. Ha-eun looked for a long time, turned the sheets over, went back to the first one. "This is non-standard," he finally said. "I know, geothermal systems are made differently. Standard ones, yes. This one is adapted to the specific site." Junso pointed at the scheme. "Here the temperature difference between the water horizon and the surface is about 30 degrees. That is enough for a heat exchanger with a coefficient of performance of 3 to 1. Did you calculate this yourself?" "With help. Whose?" Junso was silent for a second. "Specialized software," he said. Ha-eun looked at him. "Good software," he said. "Good. Fine." Ha-eun looked at the scheme again. Installation, 1 month. Testing, 2 weeks. That is if everything goes normally. What can go not normally? The heat exchanger is non-standard. If something goes wrong during installation, we will have to dismantle it and start again. Then install it so that we do not have to dismantle it. Ha-eun looked at him without a smile. He rarely smiled at all. "I always install it that way," he said. The geothermal installation was working by April. Not perfectly for the first 3 weeks. Ha-eun adjusted it, regulated it, changed parameters. But it worked. Output 35 kilowatts constantly, without fuel, without consumables. Not enough for the full supply of the shelter, but it reduced the load on the generators several times over. System energy. Geothermal installation, active. Power, 34.8 kilowatts, constant. Coverage of shelter needs, 38%. System. Diesel generators times 3, total power, 90 kilowatts. Fuel reserve, 45,000 liters. Estimated operating time, under current load, 7.2 years. Total coverage, 100% plus reserve. Recommendation, add camouflaged solar panels on the surface. After the event, the surface is radioactive, but the panels work. Additional source leads to less load on the diesel. He installed the solar panels in May. On the surface of the plateau, 200 square meters, flat, dark, at an angle. On top, camouflage nets, the color of the mountain slope. Invisible from the road, simply part of the mountain. The cables went into the shaft 35 meters down to the distribution board. The first test, a sunny day in May, 12 hours. Ha-Yun sat at the board and watched the readings. 18 kilowatts, he said. Enough? Together with the geothermal, 53. Pause. The generators can be kept in reserve, switched on only at peak load or at night in winter. Junso looked at the readings. The fuel will last longer, he said. Much longer. Hae-Yun wrote something in his notebook. In this mode, 12 to 14 years with 20 residents. System. Energy system completed. Power supply autonomy, 13.8 years. Reserve sources, 3. Stage 5, energy completed. Shelter status, level 4. Chang Mi-Rai appeared before he found her. June 2030. He placed an advertisement, careful without unnecessary details, on a closed agronomy forum. He was looking for a hydroponics specialist for a long-term closed project. 3 people wrote to him. 2, standard inquiries, salary and conditions. The third, her, Lee Jun-So-Si. My name is Chang Mi-Ri. I am an agronomist, specialization hydroponics and vertical farming. I studied your advertisement and I have a question before talking about conditions. How many square meters? This is fundamental. He replied, 280 square meters, possible expansion to 400? She replied 3 minutes later, when should I come? She arrived the next day, 28 years old, short with hair gathered in a ponytail, not because of fashion, because of the habit of people who work with their hands and do not want it to get in the way. She arrived with a backpack and separately with a small box that she carried carefully. What is in the box? Junso asked. Seeds, she said. Mine. I have been collecting them for 3 years. Why did you bring them? To look at the conditions. If it suits, I will leave them here immediately. He showed her around the shelter. Mi-Ri walked silently, looking at the ceilings, at the walls, at the lighting that he had already partially installed. She asked once at the hydroponic compartment, will it be here? Yes, show me the scheme. He showed it. She studied it for a long time, stood with the sheets for 10 minutes, turned them over, calculated something in her head. There is a mistake here, she said. Where? The distance between the tiers is 40 centimeters. For leafy crops, that is enough. But you plant tomatoes and peppers? Yes, they need 60 minimum. At 40, they will not grow normally. The yield will drop by a third. Junso looked at the scheme. Then we change the spacing, he said. Then fewer tiers will fit. The total planting area will decrease. By how much? About 15%. Is that critical? Mi-Ri thought for a second. Depends on the assortment. She looked at him. What is more important, variety or caloric value? Explain the difference in relation to the task. Mi-Ri looked at him with the slight surprise of a person who had not expected such a question. If the priority is caloric value, we plant potatoes, soybeans, cereals. A lot. Densely high calorie return per square meter. Little variety, boring to eat, but they live. If variety, leafy crops, tomatoes, greens, root crops. Fewer calories per meter, but psychologically much better. People who eat varied food hold out longer. Junso looked at the scheme. Combine them, he said. How? 70% of the area, high-calorie crops, 30, variety. Pause. People must survive, but they must also want to survive. Mi-Ri looked at him. Do you understand agronomy? She asked. I understand people. Silence. Fine, she said. I will redesign it. Pause. I will need additional materials. I will make a list. Make it. She set the box of seeds at the entrance to the hydroponic compartment. I am staying, she said, without asking. Junso nodded. Mi-Ri worked differently from everyone else. The builders, they worked until the end of the shift and left. The technical specialists installed their part and went away. Mi-Ri did not leave. She lived in the hydroponic compartment. Not literally, she slept in one of the trailers, but from 8 in the morning to 9 in the evening, she was in the compartment. Installed the racks herself, connected the pumps herself, mixed the nutrient solutions herself, checked the acidity of the water every 2 hours. Junso sometimes came in to look. Need help? He asked once. Miri looked at him from the tray of seedlings. Do you know how to work with hydroponics? No. Then no, she said. But you can bring tea if there is any. He brought it. She drank without interrupting her work, a glass in one hand, a pipette with nutrient solution in the other. Miri si, he said. Yes? You asked what was in the box? I did not. Seeds, she said. I know. Which ones? Miri set down the pipette. 273 species, she said. I collected them for 3 years. Pause. I am an agronomist. I read about what is happening to the climate, to the soils, to the environment. She looked at the trays. I did not know what exactly would happen, but I knew that something would happen. And I began collecting seeds, everything that can grow in a closed space without sunlight, under artificial light. Junso looked at her. 3 years, he repeated. Yes, you were preparing. In my own way, yes. Why did you not build a shelter? I do not know how to build, she said simply. I know how to grow. Pause. Therefore, when I saw your advertisement, I understood that your shelter plus my seeds is what is needed. Junso was silent for a second. You understood correctly, he said. System Hydroponics. Specialist Chong Miri. Area 310 square meters, expanded. Crops 47 species. Estimated productivity at full launch, 38% of daily caloric norm. Assortment balance 68% high calorie / 32% variety. Stage 6, hydroponics in progress. Progress 34%. Estimated time of full launch 4 months. So Hyan appeared a week after Miri, not alone, together with her sister. So Yan, the geologist whom he had already found and already made an agreement with. So Hyan, her younger sister, a medic, ambulance 5 years. They arrived together, 2 sisters with 2 backpacks. Junso met them at the entrance. So Yeon-si, he nodded. Junso-si, she nodded toward her sister. This is So Hyun, medic, I told you. So Hyun was 23 years old, quiet. She looked at him evaluatively, silently. Then at the mountains around, then at him again. Where is the medical block, she asked. Directly, without preface. Second level, said Junso. Come, I will show you. At that moment, the medical block was an empty room with pipes and cable routes along the walls. No equipment, no furniture. So Hyan entered, walked from corner to corner, looked at the ceiling height, at the location of the ventilation grills, at the width of the doorway. A stretcher will not pass, she said. The openings can be widened, widen them. Pause. And demolish the partition here. I need a single operating hall plus a separate infectious isolation room. Is the partition load-bearing? She looked at him. I am a medic. You are a builder. You check. Junso checked. It was not load-bearing. They demolished it. So Hyan made a list of equipment. The list took 6 pages. Junso read, surgical table, anesthesia machine, sterilization autoclave, ultrasound machine, defibrillator, resuscitation equipment, basic laboratory for blood tests. This is an operating room at the level of a district hospital, he said. A good district hospital, said So Hyan. Will you be able to work alone with all this? No. Directly. I need at least 1 assistant with medical training, and several people in the shelter need to know basic aid. Will some of the residents take a course? Everyone will take a course, she said. Basic. Stopping bleeding, artificial ventilation, fractures. I will explain that myself. Good. And one more thing. Yes, medicines. I am buying them. Show me the list. He showed it. So Hyan read, flipped through, sometimes put check marks, sometimes crosses. Too few antibiotics, she said. How many are needed? Twice as many. Pause. In isolation, infections progress differently. There is no external environment to renew immunity. After a year or 2, ordinary pneumonia becomes a serious problem. She turned the page, and there are no antifungals at all. Add them. I will add them to the list. Will you order them? Yes. So Hyan looked at him. You do not bargain, she said. Not about medicines. Why? Because I do not know medicine. You do. Pause. I build the shelter, you build the medical block. Each in his own field. So Hyan looked at him for a second. Reasonable, she said. That was the maximum approval from her. Junso understood that later. The medical block was installed for 2 months. So Hyeon supervised precisely, without unnecessary words, with the methodicalness that people have who are used to working in emergency situations where there is no time for confusion. The equipment arrived in batches. She opened every box herself, checked the completeness, arranged everything in its place. By August, the medical block was ready. So Hyeon conducted the first training session for the entire crew of builders. Basic aid, 1 hour, with practice on a mannequin. Chol-soo sat in the front row and listened more attentively than anyone. On system. Medical block active. Class minor surgery. Medicine reserve 8.3 years at estimated load. Specialist So Hyeon. Stage 7 medical block completed. Shelter status level 5. Remaining until the event 241 days. 241 days. Junso looked at the notification in the evening. Alone in his room on the first level, he had moved into the shelter completely a month earlier. He rented out the apartment in Seoul. He was burning the bridge intentionally. Supplies. That was the last major category and the most inconvenient one. Not technically, logistically. 20 people, 8 years minimum. He calculated for a long time. Canned foods, high calorie, long term, with a margin on shelf life. He purchased through 3 different suppliers. No one saw the full volume. Each batch under the guise of a wholesale purchase for the restaurant business. Rice, 3 tons. Wheat, 1.5. Legumes, 1 ton. Canned goods, meat, fish, vegetables, thousands of cans. Vegetable oil, 200 liters. Salt, sugar, spices in reserve. Additionally, what the system advised. System supplies. Critical positions that are not in the current plan. 1. Vitamins with nutrition from Hydroponics. Deficiency of D and B12 is inevitable. Reserve for 10 years, taking into account the increased dose. 2. Iodized salt is insufficient, leads to irradiation contamination. The thyroid gland is the first target, leads to potassium iodide separately. 500 tablets per person. 3. No oilseed seeds in hydroponics leads to coordinate with myri. 4. Yeast and starters for bread baking and fermentation leads to critical for psychological comfort. 5. Medical alcohol, 200 liters leads to not for consumption, for disinfection, antiseptics. He knew about potassium iodide and that life people died of thyroid cancer 2 years after the beginning. Not immediately, slowly when it already seemed that they had survived. He ordered it. 500 tablets for 20 people with a reserve for those whom he would accept later. The delivery of the supplies took 3 months. Every week trucks with materials. The drivers already knew the route and did not ask questions. They were paid well. The warehouse of the 3rd level was filling methodically. Junso kept records in 2 places, in the system and in the notebook. Every item, every expiration date, every shelf. Miri helped with the food accounting. She took over the food warehouse voluntarily. She literally made a map, drew a layout of the warehouse with markings of where everything lay. Why so detailed? Junso asked. Because in the dark, in panic, half asleep at 3 in the morning, I must find the right thing in 30 seconds, she said. He looked at the map. Reasonable, I know. System warehouses. Food reserve, 91% of plan. Medicines, 100%. Fuel, 100%. Technical consumables, 87%. Seed fund, 100%. Changmi Ri. Autonomy at 20 people, 8.7 years. Remaining to acquire technical consumables attached list. He got the remainder in 2 trips to Seoul. The last trip was October 2030. Junso rode to Seoul and looked out the train window at the city, alive, noisy, with advertising screens and cafes and people walking the streets, not knowing that they had 5 months. He bought everything on the list. Stopped by one small bookstore, took 200 books without choosing much. Fiction, textbooks, encyclopedias. People underground will read, there needs to be something to read. On the way back, he stopped at a small music store. Went in, bought a guitar. The seller packed it and asked for whom. For the company, said Junso. November 2030. 150 days left. The shelter was almost ready. The systems were working. The supplies were purchased. The staff was partially recruited. Junso sat in his room on the 1st level and looked at the list of people he had recruited. So Yeon, geologist. So Hyeon, medic. Miri, agronomist. Hae Yoon, electrician. 4 people. Of the 20 possible, 4. System. Personnel 5/20, including the host. Status critically insufficient. Note, the shelter is built. The systems work. But 20 people is not just a number, it is the minimum stable group. With 5 people, loss of 1 specialist equals critical deficit. Psychological burden on the remaining people is destructive. Risk of social collapse in 2 to 3 years is high. Recommendation: accelerate recruitment. Remaining 150 days. He knew. It was just that people are not concrete. You cannot order a batch and deliver it to the site. Every person is a conversation, a check, a decision from both sides. He resumed the search more actively than before. Through forums, through acquaintances, through the people he had already recruited. And it was then, at the end of November, that what he had not planned happened. She wrote herself, not through a forum directly. She found his contact through he did not understand how. Lee Jun-so-si. My name is O.G. Yon. I am a chemist, specialization analytical chemistry, and synthesis of pharmaceutical compounds. I do not know exactly what you are building, but I know that you are building something, and I know that it is right. I need to talk. He replied cautiously, How do you know about me? Kwon Ha-eun. He is my former classmate. He did not say anything specific, only that he is busy with an important project and that he will soon leave for a long time. I have known Ha-eun for 8 years. When he says important, it is important. Junso looked at the message. Ha-eun. Quiet, laconic. Ha-eun said too much, not much, but enough for an intelligent person. He spoke with Ha-eun. You told about the project, he said. No, said Ha-eun. She wrote to me. Ha-eun was silent. I said that I was busy and would soon leave. Pause. She is smart. She drew conclusions herself. This is a problem. She is reliable. Do you vouch for her? Ha-eun looked at him directly without hesitation. Yes, he said. Oh, Ji-yeon arrived 3 days later, 29 years old. Glasses, dark hair, dressed neutrally like a person who does not think about clothes. A tablet in her hands, not a phone. She walked through the shelter looking attentively. Not at the structure, at the details. At the pipes, at the cables, at the ventilation grills. She stopped by the water purification system. Ion exchange resins, she said. Non-standard. Pause. Radiation sorption? Yes, good choice. She looked at the resins. I would add chelating agents for heavy metals. If the horizon gets contaminated, it will be useful. What is needed for this? I know the composition. I can synthesize it myself if there is a laboratory. There is a chemical laboratory on the 2nd level. Show me. He showed it. She inspected it, opened several cabinets, checked what was already there. Few reagents, she said. List. I will write it. She closed the cabinet. Jun-so-si. Yes, do you understand what I can do here? Analysis of water and air. Synthesis of medicines that will run out. Development of formulations for disinfection from available components. Ji-yeon looked at him. Exactly, she said. Exactly that. Therefore, I want you to be here. Ha-eun said that you are a concrete person. He is too. Is that a compliment from you? That is a statement of fact. Ji-yeon, a small pause. Something in the corners of her eyes. Not a smile, but close. Fine, she said. I am staying. System. Personnel +1. Oh, Ji-yeon, chemist. Specialization, analytical chemistry, synthesis. Updated group status, 6/20. Note, chemist is a critically important specialization. Without a chemist in 3 to 4 years, medicines will run out without the possibility of replenishment, water analysis will degrade to visual, disinfectants will have to be improvised. Good choice. December, 102 days. Junso was going to Seoul for the last batch of reagents for Ji-yeon. On the train, he sat by the window, looking at the winter landscape. Fields, bare trees, rare farm buildings. Light snow, the first December snow. A woman sat nearby. He did not pay attention at first. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he noticed that she was reading. Not a phone, printed sheets, dense text, tables, graphs. He turned his head by accident, saw the title. Optimization of Nutrient Media for Anaerobic Fermentation. He looked for a second, then turned away, then looked again. The woman raised her eyes. What? She asked. without aggression, just directly. Are you a biologist? He asked. A microbiologist. Pause. Why are you asking? You are reading about fermentation. Yes. She looked at him. So what? Specifically anaerobic fermentation. Is that for production in a closed space? The woman slowly lowered the sheets. Who are you? She asked. A builder, said Junso. Builders do not read titles on sheets about fermentation. This one does. Silence. The train moved on. The landscape outside the window, snow, fields, trees. Pak in ha, she said at last. Lee Junso. She looked at him studyingly. Are you looking for a microbiologist? She asked. How did you guess? Because strangers do not ask about fermentation for no reason. Pause. And because you have the look of a person who is constantly looking for the right people. Junso looked at her. 27 years old. A calm face, one of those people who are used to working carefully and not hurrying. Tell me about your work, he said. First you about yours. The train still had 1 hour and 20 minutes to Seoul. That was enough. Inaha specialized in fermentation, creation of probiotic cultures, production of vitamins through microbial synthesis, fermented products for long-term storage and immunity. For the shelter, this was more valuable than he had thought. System. New specialization, microbiology/fermentation. Significance for the shelter. 1. Production of vitamins B, 12 and K through microbial synthesis leads to solves deficiency under isolated nutrition. 2. Fermented products leads to probiotics, immunity, dietary variety. 3. Production of lactic acid leads to natural preservative disinfectant. 4. Potentially production of antibiotics through fungal cultures. Specialist priority high. At the station in Seoul, they exchanged contacts. Inha came to the site a week later. Looked at the laboratory, spoke with Jiyeon, they immediately found a common language. After 5 minutes, the conversation went into technical details that Junso did not understand. Good. When specialists talk among themselves, it means they understand the task. System. Personnel. 720. Remaining until the event. 95 days. Status of critical specializations. Geology, check medicine, check agronomy, check electricity, check chemistry, check microbiology, check specializations that are absent. Mechanics/maintenance. Security. Programming/monitoring systems. General maintenance. Free places 13. Recommendation, active recruitment in the next 60 days. For the next 2 months he traveled. Not randomly on trains, purposefully. Meetings, conversations, checks. Kim Sonu, mechanic, 35 years old. Found through Cholsu, who knew him personally. Big, laconic, with hands that knew how to fix everything that works on engines and mechanics. Came, looked at the generators, said, I will come. Asked no more questions. Bae Gion, former military, 38 years old. Security, perimeter, protection, tactics. In that life, Junso understood too late that a shelter without a person who knows how to defend it is simply a target. Gion came through an advertisement not from a forum, through a closed veterans group. Looked at the shelter with professional attentiveness. The first question was, is there an emergency exit? 230 meters, exit beyond the perimeter. Good, said Gion. I am staying. Choe Gion, programmer, 24 years old. Monitoring systems, external sensors, automation. Young, easily nervous, Junso saw that. But smart and precise in work. And 3 without a specific specialization. Simply people who knew how to work with their hands and their heads, who were psychologically stable as much as that can be checked in advance, and who had nowhere to go. One of them was Lee Ha-rin. 22 years old. Former student, dropped out of university a year ago, did not explain the reasons. Came through an advertisement, passed the interview, answered precisely and without excess. Specialization? Junso asked. No specific one, she said honestly. But I learned quickly, and I can do many things at the same time. For example, cook for 20 people, organize storage, keep records. Pause. In an emergency situation, I do not panic. I have tested that. Where did you test it? Fire in the dormitory 2 years ago. I got 6 people out while the others stood there. Junso looked at her. Good, he said. By March 1st, 2031, there were 13 people in the shelter, 13 of the 20 possible. System. Personnel, 13 over 20. Remaining until the event, 30 days. Shelter status, level 6. All critical systems, active. Supplies, 91% of plan. Hydroponics, 67% productivity. Growth continues. Note, 7 places remain free. This is a deliberate decision reserved for survivors from outside. The system approves. Final recommendation before the event. Make sure all 13 people understand their role. Make sure everyone knows the location of the emergency exit. Make sure everyone has personal supplies for 3 days in case of emergency evacuation. The rest is in your hands. March 30th, the last evening. 13 people sat in the common hall of the first level. Someone was eating, someone was talking. Miri brought the first tomatoes from Hydroponics. Small ones, cherry, not yet fully ripe. Set them on the common table. Everyone looked at them. Harin took one, tasted it. Sour, she said. 1 more week, said Miri. Still good. Junso sat aside listening to the conversations, looking at the people. So-yeon and So-hyeon were quietly arguing about something of their own. Gi-eun was reading by the wall. In-ha and Ji-yeon were discussing cultures as always. Sonu was fixing something small, tools on his knees. The guitar stood in the corner. No one had taken it in hand yet. He stood up. "A minute," he said. Everyone turned. "Tomorrow at 6 in the morning we close the outer airlocks," he said. "Not because I decided so, because I know what will happen. If anyone still does not believe, that is normal. You will see for yourselves at 6 in the morning." Silence. "I want to say one thing," he continued. "We built a good place. We have water, food, air, light, medicine." Pause. "That is enough to survive." "But not enough to live," said So-yeon quietly. "Yes," Junso agreed. "Therefore everything else depends on us." He sat down. Gi-eun put aside the book, stood up, walked to the guitar, took it, sat down, set it on his knee, took the first chord, simple, quietly. No one said anything. They simply listened. March 31st. 5:47 a.m. Junso stood at the entrance shaft alone. Outside it was quiet. The mountains in the pre-dawn dimness, the air cold, clean. Birds, a few on the tree at the edge of the plateau. Ordinary birds, ordinary march. The last minutes of the ordinary. He looked at the sky. In that life he was in Incheon when it began, in the basement of a shopping center with other people who were hiding from the first panic in the streets. He did not understand at once what exactly had happened. He learned gradually from the radio that still worked for 2 days, from the way people went outside and came back with nosebleeds, from the way the birds disappeared in a day. Now he knew in advance. Knowledge did not make it easier, it only made it more precise. 5:51. The earth quietly, almost imperceptibly shuddered. Not from below, from the side. As if someone far away had struck a huge drum and the wave had come through the stone. Then silence. Then in the east the sky changed. Not an explosion, not a flash. The air 100 kilometers away simply became different. Visually almost imperceptible. A light haze like overheated asphalt in summer, only horizontal. It stretched upward from the ground. System emergency signal. Seismic anomalies detected. 7 points simultaneously. Korean Peninsula, Japan, Siberia, Indonesia, Andean Belt, East Africa, Iceland. Radiation background, external sensors, 0.4 microsieverts per hour to 0.9 to 1.8 to growth continues. Forecast. In 6 hours, 8 to 12 microsieverts per hour. In 24 hours, 25 to 40 microsieverts per hour. In 72 hours, first wave plateau 80 to 120 microsieverts per hour. Close external airlocks immediately. He did not hurry. He stood for another second. Looked at the sky, blue, clean, spring. At the mountains, at the tree with the birds. The birds flew away all at once, in a single movement, without sound. Junso turned and went inside. In the common hall, all 13 were there. He did not wake them, they woke up themselves. Some from the vibration, some from the system that was beeping on Gi-eun's tablet. Some simply had not slept. Different faces. So-yeon calm, already collected, with a notebook. So-hyeon beside her sister, silent. Miri by the wall, holding a mug with both hands. Gi-yun looking at the tablet, reading the sensor data. Ha-rin standing straight, hands folded, looking at Junso. Young Gi-yun the programmer sitting on the floor by the wall, pale. Junso walked to the airlock control panel. "We are closing," he said, not loudly, evenly. No one objected. He turned the key, first airlock. A deep mechanical sound, steel against steel, the seals compressed, hermetic sealing. Then the second airlock. The same sound. The indicators on the panel were green, hermetic. System. External airlocks closed, sealing 100%. Internal background 0.09 microsieverts per hour, normal. External background 3.2 microsieverts per hour and rising. Level 0 shelter, active mode. Welcome home. Silence in the hall. Then Gi-yun the programmer, still pale, said quietly, "This is really happening, not a question." "Yes," said Junso. "There are people outside. Yes, we cannot—" "No," said Junso. "Not now. Later?" He looked at the young programmer. "Later we will see what is outside, and how, and then we will decide." Gi-yun the programmer looked at him, then nodded. Slowly, like a person who had persuaded himself to accept what could not be changed. "Fine," he said. The first day passed in numbness. Not panic, numbness. People walked through the corridors, did their work, spoke little. Each processed it in their own way. Junso did not interfere. He knew the first 3 days were the hardest psychologically. Then adaptation, then routine. Routine saved. On the second day, he introduced a schedule. Not rigidly, without coercion. He simply hung a sheet in the common hall. Wake up 7 o'clock. Breakfast 7:30. Work block 9 o'clock to 12:30. Lunch 13 o'clock. Work block 14:30 to 17:30. Free time 18 o'clock to 21 o'clock. Quiet hour 21 o'clock to 22 o'clock. Lights out 22 o'clock. So-hyun asked why the quiet hour. "So that there is a transition between activity and sleep," said Junso. "Without a transition, people cannot switch off. They begin to think. In our situation, thinking at night is harmful? What to do in the quiet hour? Anything quiet. Read. Write. Just lie down. Do not talk loudly. Do not turn on bright light." So-hyun looked at him. "Did you study psychology?" "No, how do you know about this?" "From experience." She did not specify what kind of experience. On the third day, the first real conflict. A small one, but important. Gi-yun, the programmer, and Bae-gi-yun, the military man, clashed over the question of who controls the data from the external sensors. Military Gi-yun wanted to control external information. His argument, data about what is outside is a matter of security. Programmer Gi-yun, he had installed the monitoring system, knew it better than anyone. His argument, the data must be accessible to everyone, otherwise someone makes decisions for the group. Both came to Junso. He listened to both. "You are both right," he said. "That is not an answer," said the military man. "No, the answer is this." Junso looked at both of them. Gi-yun-si, he turned to the programmer. "The data is accessible to everyone. Anyone can look at it at any time. This is not up for discussion." The programmer nodded. Gi-yun-si, he turned to the military man. "The matter of responding to an external threat is yours. You see a threat, you come to me. We decide together. This is not up for discussion either." The military man looked at him. "Who makes the final decision?" "I do," said Junso. "Always?" "On questions of security and structure, yes." Pause. "On questions of medicine, So-hyun. On questions of food, Miri. On questions of water, So-yeon. Everyone is master of their own field. Is that clear?" Junso asked. Both nodded. System, conflict resolved. Method, clear delineation of zones of responsibility. System note, this will happen again. Different conflicts, different people. Your method is correct. Continue in the same spirit. By the end of the first week, the group began to work. Not perfectly, not smoothly, but to work. Each did their own task in their own zone. So-yeon took readings from the aquifer 3 times a day. Miri was in hydroponics from morning till evening. Ji-yeon launched water and air monitoring, daily analyses, posted the results on the common board. So-hyun conducted medical examinations of all 13, basic but methodical. Ha-rin took over the kitchen. Not because she was told to by herself. It was simply that on the first day when everyone stood and did not understand who would cook, she went to the kitchen and made breakfast. The next day again. On the third day, Junso asked, "Will you do this permanently?" "Until someone else wants to," she said. "That is fair, I know." She cooked well, not exquisitely, but tasty and varied as far as the supplies allowed. The first week from canned goods and cereals. From the second week, when Miri brought the first greens from hydroponics, she began adding fresh things. It mattered. The smell of fresh greens in the corridor, small, almost imperceptible, changed something in the air. It reminded them that life continues. April passed. Junso kept records not only of resources, of people too, every evening short notes. Not a diary, not a psychological report, just observations. So-yeon is stable, works methodically, in the evenings reads in her room. Sometimes comes to Miri to talk. So-hyun is occupied with the medical block, good. Occupation is her way of coping. Miri is in hydroponics constantly. The first tomato ripened on April 12th. She brought it to the kitchen and said nothing, just put it down. Harin cut it into 13 pieces. Gi-eun, military, checks the perimeter twice a day. The perimeter is the corridors and airlocks. He knows that there is no threat outside yet. He checks because something needs to be done. Gi-eun, programmer, is better. The first week was bad. Now he has truly taken up the monitoring system, brought the data to 3 screens, added automatic alerts. Good work. Sunyu is silent, works. The generators are in perfect condition. Nothing more is needed from him. The external sensors showed System External Monitoring. Date, April the 28th, 2031. Day, 28. Radiation background, plateau surface, 94 microsieverts per hour. Slope, 100 meters from the entrance. 112 microsieverts per hour. Valley, 500 meters. 156 microsieverts per hour. Meteorology, temperature, plus 4 degrees Celsius. Precipitation, rain. Radioactive background and precipitation, times 3 of the background level. Biological activity, camera 1, plateau. Movement detected, 3 objects, large. Camera 3, slope. Movement detected, flock, approximately 20 objects. Identification, difficult. Junso looked at the line, identification, difficult. Gi-eun, the programmer, sat beside him at the monitors. Camera 3, said Junso. Zoom in. Gi-eun zoomed in. The image was night vision, infrared. The slope, bare trees, the leaves had not grown in this April. Movement between the trees. Birds, but not birds. Familiar silhouettes, wings, body, 2 legs. But the size was 3 times normal, and the movements were strange. Not fluttering, not hopping. They walked. Slowly, methodically, as if they were looking for something. "What is that?" Gi-eun said quietly. "Mutation," said Junso. 28 days, that is fast. Radiation accelerates some processes. Are they crows? They were crows. Are they dangerous? I do not know. For now we observe. The next morning he gathered everyone. Showed the camera recording. The reactions were different. So-yeon looked calmly like a scientist with interest. So-hyun frowned. Miri went pale for a second, then pulled herself together. Harin stared without blinking. Military Gi-eun stood up, came closer to the screen. "Wingspan," he said. "Estimate it." "Hard to tell from the camera," said programmer Gi-eun. "But if the tree in the background is a standard pine, then..." He calculated. 2.5 meters. 3. "Weight? I do not know." "Can they break through the airlock?" Junso answered, "No, the airlock is 30 centimeters of steel." Pause, but that does not mean it should be ignored. "What do we do?" asked the military man. "We observe," said Junso. "Record behavior. Count. Look for patterns, when they are active, where they walk, what they are looking for." "Why?" "Because sooner or later we will have to go outside, and then we need to know who we are dealing with." Silence. "When will we go out?" asked Harin. "Not soon," said Junso. "The background is still high, but when we are ready." May. Day 57. Routine established itself, not because he forced it, because people found their rhythm. Morning began with Hae-rin in the kitchen. She got up at 6 before the official wake-up. Junso sometimes heard how she walked quietly, carefully, so as not to wake anyone. By 7:30 the food was ready. Breakfast became an important ritual. Not because the food was special, because it was the first common event of each day. 13 people in one hall before work began. Junso sat at the far edge of the table, watched, listened. So-yeon and Miri always talked. The topics were different. Yesterday's water readings, a new variety of leaf lettuce that had sprouted better than expected, sometimes simply what they had seen in dreams. Gion, the military man, ate breakfast quickly and left to check. Programmer Gion ate slowly, always with a tablet. Junso wanted several times to say to put away the tablet during meals, then decided no need. Everyone copes in their own way. So Hyeon came at exactly 7:30, not a minute earlier, not later. Sat down, ate neatly, went to the medical block. Once in mid-May, In-ha brought small jars to breakfast, set them on the table. "What is this?" asked Harin. "Probiotic yogurt," said In-ha. "The first batch. I cultivated the lactic acid cultures for 3 weeks." Everyone looked at the jars. "Yogurt," said Programmer Gion. "Real? Not exactly like in a store, but close." The first jar went to Gion. He opened it, tasted it, set it down, was silent for a second. "God," he said quietly. "Good?" asked In-ha. "It is fermented dairy, underground, 56 days after the end of the world." He looked at the jar. "Yes, good." In-ha, a small smile. The first one Junso had seen on her. Junso himself worked. Every day an inspection of all systems. Not because he did not trust people, because he wanted to see everything himself. Water supply every morning, ventilation twice a day, generators in the evening, external sensors constantly through the monitor in his room. The system gave daily reports. System daily report, day 57. Water, normal. Air, normal. CO, 20.08% normal. Temperature inside, plus 18 degrees Celsius. Energy, geothermal plus solar panels. Covers 61% of the load, generator in reserve. Hydroponics, productivity, 43% of the daily caloric norm. Food supplies, 98.7%, consumption normal. Medical block, 0 cases of visits in 57 days. External background, 88 microsieverts per hour, slight decrease. Forecast, stabilization in 60 to 90 days. Biological activity outside, high. New species detected, analysis attached. He read the biological activity analysis every day. In 57 days, the outside cameras had recorded much. Crows, now definitely crows, identified by shape, the size of eagles, moved in flocks. By day on the trees or on the ground, looking for something. At night in the air. They flew differently from normal birds, slower, heavier, but with unexpected acceleration when they found a target. Boars, a camera at the base of the slope, caught them on the 14th day. Hard to recognize, the size was different, the hide different, but a boar silhouette. They moved in groups of 3 or 4, stayed together. And something else. Camera 2 at night on the 23rd day. A large silhouette, very large, passed along the edge of the plateau, lingered by the ventilation outlet for 20 seconds, then left. Junso watched the recording several times. Military Gion watched beside him. "A bear," he suggested. "It was a bear," said Junso. "Why did it stop by the ventilation?" "Heat. Warm air comes from the ventilation outlet, +4 against -2 outside. And the smell of food, of people. It can smell us." "Yes, that is bad." "Not yet. The airlocks hold. The ventilation outlet has a grill made of reinforcing bars, 18 millimeters. Pause, but when we go outside, we take this into account. Day 63. Sunyu slipped on the technical level. Not a disaster, the gangway between the 3rd and 2nd levels, wet floor after scheduled washing. His foot slipped, he grabbed the handrail held, but his arm did not hold the angle. He came to So Hyeon with his arm pressed to his body. "What?" she asked. "Arm." She examined it. Fracture, radius bone, clean, without displacement. "Does it hurt?" she asked. "Bearable." "Truly bearable or male bearable?" Sunyu looked at her. "The second," he admitted. So Hyeon put on the splint quickly, professionally. 6 weeks, she said. "Do not lift anything heavy, do not hold tools. The generators, Ha-Yun will manage." She tied the last knot. "Sona-si." "Yes, the floor on the gangway is always wet after washing." Why was there no warning? I thought I would get through carefully myself. Next time we put up a warning. Pause. Not because you cannot walk carefully, because we have one mechanic. Your hands are worth more than a sign. Sunu looked at her. Fine, he said. After that, a warning system appeared in the shelter. Simple, colored magnets on the common board at each work zone. Red, danger, do not enter without notification. Yellow, caution. Green, normal. Introduced by So Hyon. She said it at the general meeting. 3 minutes, briefly without excess. No one objected. System. First medical case. Recorded. Fracture without complications. Medical block response. Checkmark side. Result, a safety warning system has been introduced. Initiator, So Hyon. Note, the group is beginning to create its own rules. This is good. Rules that the group creates are followed better than rules that the leader imposes. Junso read the system's note, then wrote in his notebook, Day 63. The group is beginning to live, not survive, live. Those are different things. End of May. Day 79. Junso was not sleeping. This did not happen often, but it did happen. Not anxiety, not fear. His brain simply would not switch off, replaying lists, checking in his head what he had already checked 10 times. He went out into the corridor. 2 in the morning, the quiet hour had long since ended. Everyone was asleep. He went to the kitchen for water. In the kitchen, a small duty light was on, dark orange, and Harin was sitting at the table, doing nothing, simply sitting with a mug, looking at the wall. He stopped at the door. I am not sleeping, she said. Without turning around, she heard the footsteps. I can see that, he said. Tea is in the thermos. Still warm. He poured some, sat on the other side of the table. Silence, not uncomfortable, simply quiet. Do you dream about something? She asked at last. Sometimes. What? Different things. She looked into the mug. I dream about the subway, she said. Souls. I am riding, stations, people, noise. I wake up and for the first 5 seconds I do not understand where I am. Then you understand. Then I understand. Pause. 5 seconds is a lot. Junso held the mug. It will pass, he said. Are you sure? No, he said. But probably. Harin looked at him and briefly, unexpectedly, gave a slight smirk. Honest, she said. I do not know how to be otherwise. I know. She took a sip of tea. Junso si. Yes? Do you ever rest? In what sense? You are every day from morning to night. Inspections, data, decisions, lists. She looked at him. I observe. You never just sit. I am sitting now. Because I cannot sleep. Yes, that is not rest. He looked at her. I do not know how to be otherwise, he repeated, but with a different intonation. Harin looked at him for a second. Learn, she said. Otherwise in a year you will break down, and we need you in working condition. Junso paused. Reasonable, he said. I know. They sat for another half hour, talked about nothing specific, about the book she had read, about how she had wanted to become a cook in childhood, about the mountains outside that she had seen only on the first day and would not see again for who knew how long. At 3 in the morning she got up. Sleep, she said. Yes. Junso si. Yes, tomorrow for breakfast, rice porridge with greens from Miri. Come, do not be late. I will come. She left. Junso sat for another 5 minutes, then wrote in the notebook, Day 79, Harin is right. I need to learn to just sit. Day 91, June. Programmer Gion called him to the monitors at 9 in the morning. Look, he said. On the screen, camera 1, the plateau. Day recording. The crows, those same ones, large with a metallic sheen to their feathers, sat on the plateau. Not a few. Many. Counted? Junso asked. 47, said Gion. That is in frame. Camera 2 has about 20 more on the slope. 70, maybe more. Those are only the ones in frame. Junso looked. The birds were doing nothing threatening, simply sitting, but all of them were looking in one direction, toward the ventilation outlet. They know that we are here, said Gion. They have smelled us since the first day, said Junso. But earlier there were a few at a time. Now a flock. Is that bad? It is information. He looked at the screen. Call military Gion. They came and the two of them looked silently. They are gathering, said the military man. Lone individuals were searching. Found it, called the others. Are they intelligent enough for that? Jun-so asked. Ordinary crows are among the smartest birds. Pause. These are different. How different, we do not know. So far, we do not know. Jun-so looked at the birds. Gi-un-si, he said to the military man. Yes, the ventilation outlet. Does the grill hold? Reinforcing bar, 18 millimeters. They will not gnaw through it with their beaks, but they can block it. If they sit as a group on the grill, the airflow will drop. The military man thought for a second. Yes, they can. We need a plan for that case. Switch to recirculation? Yes, and warn everyone. He gathered the group, showed the recordings, explained the situation calmly, without dramatization. Are they dangerous? Miri asked. To us inside, no. To the shelter, potentially. If they block the ventilation, what do we do? Gi-un, a switching plan to recirculation if the CO2 level begins to rise. Gi-un, strengthen camera monitoring, especially at night. Ji-yeon, air analysis every 4 hours until the situation becomes clear. And if they start pecking at the airlock? Programmer Gi-yeon asked. The airlock holds. But there will be sound. There will. Jun-so looked at him. Sound is not danger. Danger is panic from the sound. Pause. If they start pecking, everyone does their own work. No one goes to look, no one gathers by the airlock. The schedule does not change. Silence. That is difficult, said Harin quietly. Yes, said Jun-so. But necessary. The next day, the birds landed on the ventilation grill. Not all, 9 of them. Silently, without movement. The airflow sensor showed a 12% drop in flow. Gi-yeon, the programmer, gave an alert, quiet without a siren. Jun-so was in the workshop with Sonu when the signal came. Ventilation? Sunyu asked. Birds on the grill. Switching? Not yet. 12% is not critical. We watch. The birds sat there for 4 hours, then flew away. The airflow returned to normal. System. Incident: biological ventilation blockage. Duration: 4 hours, 17 minutes. Flow reduction: 12%. Consequences: none. Recommendation: install a mechanical repeller on the ventilation outlet. Ultrasonic or vibration-based? Your choice. Ultrasound range for large birds: 15 to 20 kHz. Additionally, study flock behavior. Crows with this level of coordination are a new biological type. Data is still insufficient. Ultrasonic repeller, said Jun-so to Gi-yeon, the programmer. I can assemble it from what we have, said the latter. We have ultrasonic transducers in the workshop. A day or two. Do it. 2 days later, a small device was installed at the grill through the internal channel. Completely unnoticeable from outside. They turned it on for a test. The birds on the plateau reacted immediately. Those that were closer to the ventilation outlet rose into the air, flew 20 meters away. It works, said Gi-yeon. Good. They did not fly away completely. No, just farther away. Jun-so looked at the monitor. They are intelligent. They will get used to the ultrasound. In time, it will become part of the background. Then what? Then we will think of something else. Pause. One solution closes one problem. The next one will be different. July. Day 120. Gi-yeon, the programmer, created a separate observation log for external biological activity. Not by order, on his own. He showed it to Jun-so during a routine inspection. Look, he said, I collected data for 4 months. A table by days, by time, by types of activity. Jun-so read carefully. Crows are active mainly from dawn to noon. Afternoon, a decline in activity. At night, air patrols, solitary individuals, not as a flock. Boars are nocturnal. They appeared at the lower sensor after midnight. Small groups, 3 or 4 individuals. They moved along the slope, lingered at places where there was a smell. The large silhouette, the one that stopped by the ventilation the first time, appeared rarely. 8 times in 4 months. Always alone. Always at night. Always stopped at the ventilation outlet for several minutes. Is it a bear? Jun-so asked again. Look at this. Gi-yeon opened a separate folder. Camera 2, June 6th. Night, infrared mode. Recording silhouette at the ventilation. Large, dark, but not bear-like. 4 limbs, but it moved differently, sometimes on 2 hind legs. The head was large, disproportionate, and something he had not noticed on the other recordings before. Claws. Long, visible even in infrared. What is it? Gion said quietly. Junso looked at the recording. I do not know, he said. It was the first time in 120 days that he had said those words. In the evening, he told military Gion. He watched the recording twice. A bear, he said. Are you sure? No. He was silent. But if it is a bear after 4 months of radiation, then we do not know what it has become capable of. An ordinary bear does not stand on its hind legs and remain that way so long. An ordinary one does not. Silence. Gion-si, said Junso. Yes, when we go outside, this is the first thing to take into account. Understood. Pause. When are we going out? Junso looked at the background data. The background is decreasing, slowly but decreasing. He calculated in his head. A month and a half. The first trial exit. The military man looked at him. Trial means who? Me, said Junso. No. That is not up for discussion. No, Gion repeated. It is up for discussion. You cannot be the first. You lead the shelter. Losing you is critical for the group. Pause. I go first. Junso looked at him for a long time. The two of us, he said at last. Fine, said Gion. Day 142. August. Junso laid out the equipment on the workshop table. 2 protective suits, he had ordered them even before the beginning, through an industrial catalog. Officially for work with chemical reagents, in reality for radiation protection. Multi-layer with lead polyethylene impregnation, hermetic seams. 2 full-face gas masks with combined filters. Protection from particles, from gases, from radioactive dust. 2 personal wearable dosimeters. Plus 1 handheld Geiger counter, 2 radios. Communication with the shelter. Military Gion stood beside him, checking his gear methodically. Every seam, every fastening, every filter. Silently, Junso checked in parallel. 30 minutes maximum, said Gion. He was not asking, he was clarifying. 25, said Junso. 5 in reserve for the unforeseen. Route. Exit from the shaft. Plateau, route along the perimeter. Ventilation outlet, inspection from outside. Back, approximately 180 meters. Yes, slowly without haste. Birds. We observe, we do not provoke. If they approach, we stand still, do not move. Gion looked at him. Did you study bird behavior? I observed for 4 months through the cameras. Pause. They react to sudden movements. Slow ones they ignore. How do you know? Camera 3, day 28. A boar passed under the tree where the flock was sitting. Slowly, they did not react. Then something startled it. It bolted, the whole flock took off. Gion looked at him. You saw all that? I watched the recordings. All the recordings for 4 months? Yes. Silence. Understood, said Gion, slowly without sudden movements. So Hyon came in the evening the day before the exit. Put 2 small boxes on the table. Potassium iodide, she said. 1 tablet each. An hour before the exit. We will be in suits. The suit protects from particles. Iodide from inside. Pause. Do not argue with me on medical matters. I am not arguing, said Junso. And this. She put down a small container. Anti-radiation gel for exposed areas, neck, wrists at the edge of the mask. In case the seal is broken. Understood. One more thing. Yes. If the background is above 80 microsieverts per hour, you return immediately. Not in 25 minutes, immediately. The system shows 62 outside. The system shows it on the sensors that stand by the ventilation. On the open plateau, it may be higher. She looked at him. Junso-si. Yes, I need you alive. She said it evenly, as a medic, professionally, but he looked at her. We will return, he said. Orgus system. Day 142. First surface exit. Estimated radiation dose for 25 minutes on the surface. At a background of 62 microsieverts per hour. Approximately 26 microsieverts. Permissible one-time dose. Non-standard conditions. 100 microsieverts. Reserve sufficient. Suit reduces the dose by 89%. Final estimated dose approximately 2.9 microsieverts. Safe. Recommendations: do not remove gloves. Do not raise dust from the surface. In case of precipitation, immediate return. Check dosimeters every 5 minutes. The system will track the sensor readings in real time. Emergency signal if the threshold is exceeded. Good luck. Day 143. 7 a.m. in the common hall, all 11. No one came specially, they just happened to be there. Someone with a mug, someone by the wall. Harin made breakfast but ate little, looked at Junso and Gion. Miri approached Junso. Take this. She held out a small packet. What is it? Seeds, she said. In a hermetic packet. Pause. If you find anything interesting outside, soil, a plant, take a sample. I need to know what is happening to the plants outside. All right, and just look. She paused slightly. At the sky. I have not seen the sky for 4 months. Junso looked at her. I will look, he said. At 7:20, they stood at the first airlock. Both in suits and gas masks, dosimeters on their wrists, the Geiger counter with Junso, a radio on both. Ready? Asked Gion. The voice through the mask was muffled. Yes? Junso opened the first airlock. Between the airlocks, a small decontamination chamber. Empty. White walls with dosimetric markings. He closed the first airlock behind him. Opened the second. A step. Another. Then the shaft. 8 meters in diameter, 35 up. Metal staples along the wall upward. They climbed in silence. 35 meters up, not long? 3 minutes. Junso climbed out first, stood, looked. The sky existed. Gray, not like a rainy sky, differently. Uniformly gray with a slightly yellowish tint that had never been there before. The sun was not visible behind the layer, but it was light. Not bright even. The plateau was the same plateau. Rock, edges, slope downward. But everything was different. The trees on the slope were dead. Not broken, simply dead. Standing, gray, without leaves, without bark in places. As if they had dried out from within. The grass that had been there in March, gone. Bare stone here and there, dark spots. Moss, but different. Dark brown, unfamiliar. The air, the Geiger counter in his hand, crackled quietly. Background 71 microsieverts per hour. Higher than the sensors below had shown. So Hyon was right. Junso pressed the radio button. We are on top, he said. Background 71. Working. Programmer Gion answered from below. Received. I am watching the sensors. Military Gion stood beside him. They looked at the plateau for a second, then slowly began to walk. Every step careful? Not because the ground was unstable, because they had agreed, slowly, quietly. Only the wind was weak from the north, and the crackle of the counter. Then Junso heard it. At first he did not understand what exactly. A sound high-pitched, low frequency at the same time, as if the air were vibrating. Then he saw. They were sitting on the edge of the plateau. 12, motionless as stones, dark with a metallic sheen that in real life looked different than on the monitors. Not just sheen, it shimmered. Blue, black, blue again. The size in real life was even more unexpected. Larger than an eagle. The head proportionate, but with a beak that curved more strongly than that of normal ravens. Legs with long claws that held to the edge of the rock without effort. Eyes. Junso stopped. They were looking at him. Not with threat, not with fear. Simply looking. Attentively. The way a creature looks that is evaluating. Gion stood beside him, also stopped. Do not move, said Junso quietly into the radio. I see them on the camera, answered the programmer. How many? 12 in sight. On camera 3, another 8 on the slope. They are looking in your direction. 20. Junso stood motionless and looked at the raven directly in front of him, the closest one 10 meters away. The raven looked at him, then slowly, without hurry, tilted its head, slightly to the side, as if thinking. Junso did not move. The raven tilted its head to the other side, then raised one leg, slowly, put it on the other edge of the rock. Simply stepped over, a small movement, and froze again. What is it doing? Said Gion quietly, almost without sound. Checking, Junso answered, just as quietly. Us? Us. Silence, 30 seconds, a minute. Then the raven, that same one, the nearest, opened its beak. The sound was not a caw, not what Junso expected. Deeper, more complex. Several notes at once, as if two voices were in one throat. The other birds on the edge answered briefly, almost synchronously. Then the nearest raven closed its beak, turned its head, looked aside, a gesture that in humans would mean not interesting, or enough. The birds slowly, without hurry, began to rise into the air. one after another. They did not fly far. They rose and settled on the dead trees lower down the slope. The plateau emptied. Junso and Gion stood for a long time. They did not attack, said Gion. No. Why? I do not know. Junso looked at the trees where the birds were sitting. But they could have. There are 2 of us. There are 20 of them. Maybe they are not hungry. Maybe. Or they understood that we are not a threat. Junso looked at the trees. Or something third that we do not yet understand. They walked the rest of the route. They inspected the ventilation outlet. The grill holds, the ultrasonic repeller is not visible from outside. There are no traces of damage. Only claw marks on the edges of the grill. Not deep scratches. They have sat here a long time, many times. Miri asked for a soil sample. Junso took one. With a spatula into a hermetic container. Dark earth, strange, not crumbly like normal soil. Dense, almost compacted. A plant sample, that same dark moss was growing at the edge of the plateau. He took a piece. He looked at the sky. Gray, uniform with a yellow tint. No clouds in the usual sense, simply a layer. Dense, as if the sky had become lower. He looked for a long time. Thought of Miri, who had not seen the sky for 4 months. This sky was not the one she remembered. But still the sky. The dosimeter beeped. 25 minutes. We are returning, said Junso. They went to the shaft. The birds on the trees watched. Saw them off with their eyes. Not one rose. The airlock closed. Decontamination chamber, ultraviolet, 12 minutes. Then the shower, water with disinfecting solution. They removed the suits methodically as taught, outside inward, so that the contaminated surface would not touch the skin. So Hyan was waiting behind the second airlock. Examined both dosimeters, skin, eyes. Doses? 3.2 microsieverts, said Junso. 3.08, said military Gion. Normal, said So Hyan. Both. Then a pause. What is it like there? She asked. Quietly. Not as a medic, as a person. Dead, said Junso, but not empty. In the common hall, everyone was waiting. He told it briefly. Trees, sky, soil, ravens. They listened silently. When he finished, Miri spoke first. Did you take samples? Here. He put the container on the table. She took it at once, carefully, opened it. Looked at the soil. Dark, she said. The structure has changed. Radiation affects the microbial composition of the soil, said Inha beside her. May I look? After me. Programmer Gion looked at Junso. The ravens. They really just looked? Yes, and did not attack. No. Why? I do not know yet. But you are thinking about it. Yes. Programmer Gion looked at the table. They are smarter than they were, he said. Probably. Is that frightening or not? Junso thought for a second. It is a fact, he said. Whether it is frightening or not, we will decide when we know more. Haran approached him in the evening. In the kitchen after dinner when the others had dispersed. Junso see. Yes, the sky. What? You promised to look at the sky. For Miri. I looked. What is it like? He thought. Gray, with a yellow tint. Without clouds, simply a layer. Pause. Bright. The sun is not visible behind it, but you can feel it. Haran listened. Bright, she repeated quietly. Yes, good, she said. That is good. She left. Junso heard how she walked down the corridor, stopped by Miri's room, knocked, entered. Through the thin partition, quiet voices. He did not hear words. Only a minute later, something like laughter. Quiet, short. The first laughter in the shelter in 143 days. System, day 143. First exit, completed. Losses, none. Data obtained, soil, biology, background. External situation, background decreasing. Forecast in 90 days. First plateau at the level of 30 to 40 microsieverts per hour. At this level, regular exits are possible. Biological situation, mutated ravens, intelligence higher than expected. Interaction, neutral. Recommendation, continue observation. Group condition, stable. System note. Today people laughed in the shelter for the first time. This is not in the performance summary. But it is more important than many performance indicators. A year. Exactly a year from the moment the airlocks closed. Junso sat in his room late after midnight, notebook on his knee, writing, not a list, simply writing. For the first time in a year, he was writing not a list and not a report. A year, we are alive, all 13. Not a single serious illness. So Hyeon says that immunity is holding better than she expected. In-ha thinks that is thanks to the yogurt and probiotics. Both are right, probably. Hydroponics, 48% of the daily norm. Mirai wants 55 by next summer. I believe she will do it. The water is clean. Soyeon found a small change in the mineral composition of the horizon. Radiation penetrated deeper than we calculated. Jiyeon adjusted the filters. We are holding. We went outside 8 times. The background dropped to 41. Not yet safe, but better. Every time Giyeon and I, every time the birds watch and do not touch. On the third exit, one raven flew close. Very close, 1.5 meters. Landed on a stone nearby. Looked for several minutes. Giyeon kept his hand at his belt. There is no weapon there, simply habit. I did not move. The raven looked, then made that sound. 2 voices in one throat, then flew away. What it was I do not know. Giyeon says a warning. I think no. Rather an introduction. Possibly I am mistaken. Possibly not. The large silhouette, what used to be a bear, comes more rarely. Last time, 3 weeks ago. Stood by the ventilation for 20 minutes, then left. Did not touch anything. There are other people outside. We found traces on the 4th exit. An old campfire, 3 weeks old. A can, not ours. Footprints, several people. Someone survived outside. How? Unclear. The background is too high for life without protection, but the traces are there. Giyeon wants to search. So Hyeon says that if we find them, we must take them in. We have 7 free places. Harin was silent when we discussed it, then said, we cannot sit here and know that outside someone is dying. She is right. I know she is right. But every person outside is a risk. It is an unknown. It is someone else's rules and someone else's fears. In that life, I was killed over 4 cans of food. In this one, I built a place where there are enough cans for years, but it is a place for people, not for cans. 7 places, that means we will search. Junso. March 31st, 2032. He closed the notebook, stood up, walked through the corridor quietly at night, stopped by the common hall, looked in. The duty light was on, dark orange, warm. On the table, someone's books, a mug, a notebook. On the shelf, a small pot with a tomato from Hydroponics. Miri brought it a week ago. Said that green should be not only in the work compartments, she was right. On the wall, Heyrin had hung a drawing, simple in pencil. The mountains, those same ones outside. Drawn from memory, she had never really known how to draw, and still it was clear that they were mountains. Under the drawing, a small inscription. Outside is waiting. Junso stood and looked at the drawing. Outside, 41 microsieverts per hour. Dead trees. Ravens that look with intelligent eyes. Something large that used to be a bear. Somewhere living people. And the sky. Gray with a yellow tint, but bright. The sun behind the layer is not visible, but it is there. Destum. Day 365. A year. Shelter status level 7. Group 13 people, all alive. Autonomy 7.8 years. External background 41 microsieverts per hour, decreasing. The system has nothing to add. The shelter is built. The people are alive. Outside is waiting. What happens next depends only on you. Junso turned off the tablet. Walked to the airlock, simply looked. The steel door, cold, dark. Behind it, 35 meters up, and then a world that had changed forever. He stood by the door for a long time, then turned around and went to sleep. Tomorrow the 8th exit, and for the first time he decided to take a third person. Harin said that outside is waiting. Let her see it for herself.